Episode 2, Forming the Alliance. It has been ages since anybody disconnected from the AR. Some of the newer generations don't even know that the AR is not real. One of those young people is Lena Carter, the daughter of Elias and Ilana Carter, one of the most prominent and influential families in Hightown. Feeling uncomfortable with the AR and the whole aristocracy of Hightown, Lena has hooked up with Rex Talon, a werewolf biker, member of the Iron Howlers, one of the most notorious outlaw motorcycle clubs of the underworld. Lena discovered that she has the power to tune, the skill of rearranging the AR according to her will. She is the first non-syndicate member to be able to tune. Rex wanted to prove to himself that he was worthy of Lena, so he participated in the death match. The underworld never truly slept. Even during its quietest hours, the biker district breathed with the restless pulse of engines, distant sirens, laughter, and violence. Somewhere beneath the neon haze, someone was always racing, fighting, drinking, or falling in love for the very last time. It was one of the few places in the AR where people still behaved and misbehaved like the poles of human behavior. Rex Talon sat alone in a dim garage beneath the drifter moon. The naked Gixus rested on a lift in front of him, pieces of old-world machinery spread across the floor like the remains of a mechanical animal being rebuilt after war. Oil stained his hands. Grease darkened his shirt. A half-empty bottle of what could only be a hard drink sat beside him like a failed attempt at forgetting. Outside, the full moon hung enormously above the district. Perfect, beautiful, dark, a little too perfect, artificial, beautiful enough to fool anyone who wanted to believe. Finn walked in and leaned against the garage entrance, his hands hanging from the inside part of the sleeve holes on his cut jacket. "Are you done feeling sorry for yourself yet?" Rex didn't answer. Finn glanced at the bottle. "What are you drinking anyway?" Rex took another sip, drowning my sorrows in Dr. Pepper. Finn laughed softly. "It's a full moon tonight. That means lake run." Rex stared at the bike in silence. "I can't believe I lost." "You know that vampire cheated, right?" "Still," Rex muttered, "I should have won. I know I'm better than him." Finn nodded slowly. "Yeah, well," he shrugged. "You're still here. That's what matters." That was precisely the problem. Rex wasn't sure it did matter. Ever since the death match, something inside him had shifted. He could still feel the fire wrapping around him, could still hear the impossible sound the world made when Lena tuned him out of death itself. The explosion should have destroyed him. Instead, it had exposed something hidden beneath the surface of the AR, something that now refused to leave him alone. "How are you even here?" Finn asked quietly. "Nobody walks away from the death match." Rex looked down at his hands. "Lena brought me back." Finn frowned. "With her tuning?" Rex nodded. The silence that followed felt heavier than the garage walls around them. Outside, somewhere deeper in the district, wolves howled at the perfect moon. The moon that really did not exist. Far above the underworld, Lena Carter stood in the entrance hall of Carter Tower, fastening the straps of her leather gloves, while Ilara watched her carefully from the base of the staircase. "Bye, Mum. See you later. And where do you think you're going now, young lady?" "Just out for a ride." Ilara descended one step slowly. "You're off to see that biker, aren't you?" Lena rolled her eyes slightly. "A werewolf biker of all people," Ilara continued. "There is nothing wrong with werewolves," Lena answered sharply. "It's just an avatar, remember?" Ilara's expression changed almost imperceptibly. "What is that supposed to mean?" Lena stared at her mother. "You tell me." For the briefest moment, the polished elegance of Hightown cracked between them. Ilara stepped closer. "You've been using your gift to snoop around again, haven't you?" Lena laughed softly. "My gift, right." "Yes, tuning is a gift," Ilara insisted. "Please tell me you're not tuning in the underworld. You have no idea how dangerous it can be." "No," Lena whispered. "I don't. So why don't you tell me?" A pause settled between them, cold, heavy. The kind that existed when both people knew more than they were willing to say aloud. Lena reached for her helmet. "I'm going to be late." As the elevator doors closed, Ilara remained standing beneath the silver lights of the tower, staring upward toward the artificial moon glowing outside the glass walls. "It's a full moon tonight," she whispered to herself. The ride through the city felt different now. Ever since the death match, Lena could no longer fully surrender herself to the illusion of the AR. The holographic billboards towering above the highways no longer looked elegant. They looked invasive, like glowing commandments demanding attention every few seconds. Pleasure, consumption, entertainment, escape. The system was always feeding, and people called it paradise. Ilara had called it paradise, more than once. And this is what bothered Lena the most. Did her mother know about the AR? Did her father? Is this why they're always so controlling all the time? What were they hiding? By the time she reached the underworld, the noise of the district swallowed her thoughts again. Engines thundered through neon-lit streets, while crowds poured between bars, garages, gambling dens, and tuning shops hidden beneath layers of flickering advertisements. The drifter moon burned at the center of it all, like a broken lighthouse. Even though Rex pretended to be angry at her for saving him from the death match and ruining his opportunity to return as a young, beautiful girl, they reconciled quickly, because some connections were stronger than pride, and some truths became impossible to ignore once seen. Rex stood beside his bike as Lena entered the garage. For a moment, neither spoke. The full moonlight spilled through the cracked skylights above them, mixing with the blue neon glow of the district outside. It painted Rex in red, blue, and shadow, making him look like a film noir character pulled from the pages of some futuristic comic book. Without saying anything, without either one of them having to apologize, explain, or try to reconcile their differences, they both sat on the floor next to each other, They held each other's hands. "I want to ask you something," Lena said quietly. Rex looked at her with a smirk. "Sounds serious." "It is." She hesitated. "Do you remember your childhood?" "Of course." "Tell me a memory." Rex opened his mouth immediately, then stopped. His brow tightened. "What do you want to know?" "Anything." The silence stretched. Rex looked away. He frowned harder now. Lena stepped closer. "You can't, can you?" His voice sounded genuinely shaken now. "Now that I think about it, I can't remember anything from my childhood." The realization disturbed him. "How can that be?" Lena nodded slowly. "You can't remember anything, right?" Rex stared at her. "Neither can I," she continued. "Did I go to school? Did I have friends? Nothing." The garage suddenly felt colder. "Now let me ask you this," Lena said carefully. "When was the last time you traveled outside the city?" "Yesterday," Rex answered. "The German district." "Did you get on a plane?" "No." "A boat?" Rex shook his head. "You just got on your bike," Lena whispered, "and suddenly you were there." The words settled over him like poison, finally reaching the heart. "It's all part of the AR," she continued. "We don't even know if the AR is a city or a country." Rex stared at her. "What's going on?" Lena reached into her jacket and slowly removed the glasses. "It's better if I show you." The world disappeared again. This time, Rex was prepared for the nausea. Barely. The master control program unfolded around them like the exposed nervous system of a god. Endless rivers of data stretched into infinity, while fractured pieces of reality floated in darkness around them. Rex looked down. There was no ground, only code. "What the hell?" Lena's voice echoed softly through the digital void. "I'll try my best to explain." Massive holographic structures rose around them. Maps, memory files, archived war footage, biological scans, endless streams of information buried beneath the illusion of paradise. "The AR is not the real world," Lena said. "It's just what the Syndicate calls augmented reality, a digital world where they control us." Images flashed, cities burning, armies of vampires fighting beneath blackened skies. The earth had been scorched by war. "In the real world," Lena continued, "the vampire wars caused a famine. There weren't enough humans left to feed them. Rex watched enormous fields of human bodies connected to machines through cybernetic implants. Both vampire factions agreed that the AR was necessary. A farm, a factory, a feeding ground. The Syndicate won the war," Lena said quietly. "After that, humans were no longer allowed to leave." Another image appeared. Vampires walking beneath a dead sun with mechanical implants glowing beneath their skin. "With the cybernetic implants," she whispered, "the Syndicate can survive the scorched earth sunlight." Then came the Wendigos. Rex recoiled instinctively. They were not elegant like the Syndicate aristocracy. These creatures were more mechanical and strong, but with the hunger of a starving beast. Things covered in blood, tearing into human flesh with animalistic desperation. Some of them changed, Lena said. They need more than blood now. Flesh makes them stronger. The final image appeared, the death match, explosions, riders disappearing, bodies harvested in darkness. That's why they created the race, Lena whispered. It's an excuse for people to disappear from the AR. Rex felt sick. In the real world, Lena's voice trembled now, the vampires eat the losers. Finn came into the garage. It is a full moon. It is time to put on our war faces. It is Lake Run, he yelled excitedly. He immediately transformed into wolf form. He started howling with enthusiasm. Every full moon, the Iron Howlers abandoned the noise and neon of the underworld for something older. The Lake Run was more than a ride. It was a ritual. Beneath towering forests and silver moonlight, the werewolf bikers thundered through the winding mountain roads in loose formation, their headlights carving through the darkness like predatory eyes. During the run, many of them embraced their wolf forms openly, riding beneath the enormous glowing moon with the kind of savage freedom the AR could never fully suppress. The roar of engines echoed through the trees alongside distant howls, turning the forest into something that felt ancient and untamed, as if the world itself briefly remembered what it had been before the Syndicate covered it in illusion. But that night, something felt wrong. Deep in the forest, the only road leading toward the lake had been sealed off. A massive fallen log blocked the path beneath a bright red closed sign that looked almost absurd beneath the moonlight. The obstruction appeared fresh, deliberate, and completely out of place. The Iron Howlers slowed instinctively, suspicion moving through the pack faster than words. In the underworld, roads did not simply close themselves, especially not on the night of a full moon. Lena used her tuning to immediately clear the road. This put the Iron Howlers on edge, as they thought someone from the Syndicate was following them. As the night deepened, the line between man and wolf blurred. Some of the howlers transformed completely, disappearing into the woods before returning moments later with mud on their claws and wild exhilaration burning in their eyes. Others wrestled near the shoreline beneath the moonlight, while a few reckless riders held illegal sprint races down the empty forest roads, engines screaming through the mountains like war cries. Finn and Rex usually organized flat-track races on cruisers, while the rest of the pack howled and placed bets around the fire. Grimfang preferred quieter traditions, standing near the lake with the older members of the club, drinking in silence while listening to the wolves howl into the darkness. Some of them took their old lady for a more private lake run. For a few precious hours during the lake run, the Iron Howlers were not fugitives, racers, or prey trapped inside a digital prison. They were simply a pack beneath the moon, trying to remember what being alive was supposed to feel like. Joey approached Rex. He was a young prospect for the club. His long blonde hair fell carelessly around his face, catching the moonlight in pale strands that softened features otherwise sharpened by exhaustion and survival. A good-looking young teenager. The black leather jacket hanging from his lean frame was covered in old patches and faded insignias from a life spent chasing speed, violence, and belonging in equal measure. Too many for his young age. Even though he looked tough and older for his age, there was a sense of tenderness and innocence in him that made him very popular in the club. P wants me to go on a beer run. Rex nodded. Can I use your bike? Sure thing, Joey, said Rex. Really? This was an impossibility just a few hours before. After tonight, none of these things will matter anymore. What do you mean? You'll see, said Rex with a slight smile, trying to hide his worry. Hours later, after a night of beer drinking and moon howling, the Iron Howlers gathered at the side of the lake. The once roaring werewolf bikers had mostly returned to human form now, though traces of the wolf still lingered in their eyes and movements. Smoke drifted throughout from the bonfires, and old rock music echoed faintly through wireless speakers and front fairings. The wild energy of the lake run slowly settled into something quieter, heavier. Empty beer bottles rested near the shoreline beside motorcycle helmets and scattered playing cards. Smoke drifted lazily upward through the towering pine trees, while the enormous moon reflected across the black surface of the lake like a second world buried beneath the water. The pack gathered near the only fire remaining by the side of the lake. Some sat on fallen logs, others leaned against their motorcycles in silence, still catching their breath from the night's chaos. Beneath the fading adrenaline and drunken laughter, Lena could feel the tension beginning to shift. The Iron Howlers were not stupid men and women. Reckless, violent, impulsive perhaps, but not stupid. They had spent their entire lives surviving the underworld. Instinct had kept them alive this long. Jackson Kane, president and founder of the original chapter, aka Grimfang, stood near the fire with his arms crossed over his chest. Even in human form, there was something wolf-like about him. Broad shoulders, grey streaks are beginning to creep into his beard, eyes that looked permanently exhausted from carrying too many years of leadership on them. When Grimfang finally spoke, with his deep, coarse, raspy, masculine voice, the entire pack quieted almost immediately. Listen up! The crackling fire became the only sound for a moment. Grimfang gestured toward Lena. This is Rex's old lady. Her name's Lena. His eyes swept across the gathered riders carefully. She's the one who's been tuning. She's the reason Rex is still standing here tonight. A low murmur moved through the group. Steelhide, the club's sergeant-at-arms, shook his head slowly beside the fire. You sure scared the hell out of us out there on the road, he muttered. We thought the syndicate was on our tail. A few nervous laughs followed, but they faded quickly, because nobody truly laughed when the syndicate was mentioned. Grimfang looked toward Rex. All right, he growled. What's this all-important announcement? Rex glanced toward Lena. The firelight reflected softly in her eyes as she stood there beneath the moon, holding the glasses carefully in both hands. I think it's better if she just shows you. Lena used her tuning ability to show the Iron Howlers the truth about the AR. With a stroke of her thought, every one of them had VR glasses on. The world dissolved. At first, the Howlers thought Lena was simply projecting another illusion into the AR. Colors warped around the lake as the firelight stretched unnaturally across the trees. The stars above them fragmented into grids of glowing code, while the moon flickered violently like a dying hologram. Then the real world appeared. The truth had been revealed, and there was no turning back. The reaction was immediate. The once fearless outlaw bikers now stood frozen in shock. Their expressions shifted from confusion to disbelief, then horror. The forest became dead. The lake became poisoned black water, surrounded by ash and skeletal trees. The sky above them turned grey and sickly, covered in smoke thick enough to swallow the stars entirely. Massive industrial towers rose in the distance like tombstones piercing the earth. And beyond all of it, rows upon rows of human bodies connected to machines. Fight blood extraction lines, harvest fields. The silence that followed felt unbearable. One of the younger prospects stumbled backward and vomited into the dirt. Another crossed himself instinctively. Joey just looked at them both. He was in panic, but still thinking clearly. The tougher members of the pack simply stared ahead, unable to process what they were seeing. The Iron Howlers had spent their lives fighting, drinking, racing, and surviving in the underworld. They feared bullets, vampires, explosions, and death itself. But this... "We're cattle," someone whispered. Rex stepped forward slowly. "I know it's a lot to take in." Grimfang stared at the dead landscape around them, his jaw tightening. "How can this be?" he muttered. "For how long?" "Decades," Lena answered softly. "Maybe longer. I don't know for sure." She looked around at the stunned faces surrounding her. "Rex and we were born inside the AR. From what I found in the Master Control program, some of the older people in Hightown actually saw the real world before the end of the Vampire Wars." Rex's expression darkened. "That means they chose this," he said quietly. "They made a deal with the Syndicate." Nobody answered him, because deep down, everyone understood why people would make that deal. And it was not until Rex said the words that Lena let that thought come to the front of her mind. It had been suppressed to the back end of her subconscious, as a safety mechanism. She didn't want to accept it. Her own mother and father had betrayed her. They are letting some vampire drink from her own daughter's blood. But for how long? Grimfang turned toward Lena again. "Can you use those glasses to disconnect us?" he asked. "Wake us all up?" Lena, with a raspy voice, answered, "I already tried." The answer alone felt like another wound. "The Master Control program is too secure. I can't get through the firewalls." She looked down briefly at the glasses. "I would have to connect directly into the main port." Steelhide frowned. "And where exactly is that?" Rex answered before Lena could. "The castle." A low wave of unease moved through the group immediately. Steelhide requested clarification. "The castle?" he said incredulously. The one in the German district, Castle. Lena nodded. We're going to need your help, she said. We need the iron howlers for this. The fire crackled between them. Grimfang remained silent for a long moment, staring out across the poisoned version of the lake still flickering through Lena's tuning. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded older somehow. All right. Every eye turned toward him. This is going to be dangerous. He looked carefully around the pack. I can't force anybody into this. Every man and woman here gets to make their own choice. He pointed toward the dying world around them. If you want to stay inside the AR and keep being food for the bloodsuckers, that's on you. The wolves within the pack stirred uneasily. But if you want to fight, Grimfang continued, be at the clubhouse tonight for church. Lena exhaled quietly. Thank you, Grimfang. Don't thank me yet, he muttered. Let's see how many actually show up. Then, something almost amused crossed his face for the first time all night. But not to worry, he said. I know just the man for the job. He looked around for someone. Finn. Finn straightened slightly. Yes, P? You know how to get in touch with Cross, right? Finn immediately groaned. Oh, no. Make sure he comes tonight. Finn rubbed his face dramatically. Crazy Michael Ironwing Cross, he asked. See me funny and I'll send your liver through your eyeballs. Cross? Grimfang stared at him blankly. You know any other Cross? Finn sighed heavily. No. Good. Grimfang grabbed another beer from the cooler beside the fire. Bring the one you know. The lake in front of them, with the sunrise in the background, looked as beautiful as ever. But now, none of them could look at it the same way again. Deep within the German district, beyond the towering black forests and Gothic spires of the Syndicate's territory, stood the castle. The structure rose from the mountainside like something pulled from an ancient Bavarian medieval nightmare and rebuilt with modern architecture. Massive obsidian towers pierced the grey skies, while crimson lights pulsed faintly behind narrow cathedral windows. Gargoyle statues watched from every ledge, their hollow eyes staring down into the endless fog that surrounded the fortress. The vampires called it a palace. Different guards policed the surroundings day and night. More machine than vampire, and certainly less human than any other creature in the AR. At its highest point, buried beneath layers of steel, stone, and encrypted systems, sat the control room of the Syndicate, the control room of the castle. Felt less like a military command center and more like the heart of a machine designed to rule civilizations. Cold metallic walls curved around endless arrays of glowing consoles and holographic displays, each one pulsing with streams of data from every corner of the AR. Dim orange and crimson lights reflected across polished steel surfaces, casting the chamber in the constant glow of artificial dusk. The air carried a low mechanical hum, as if the castle itself were alive beneath the floor. Cyborg vampires moved silently between the stations, their glowing red eyes flickering against the darkness like warning lights inside the body of some colossal predator. Everywhere you looked, the room radiated control. Surveillance feeds, neural maps, race telemetry, population metrics, blood harvest projections, all flowing endlessly through the syndicate's hands. They were the veins that carried the lifeblood of an empire. Lucia stood at the center of that cold machinery with unsettling elegance. Her pale skin contrasted sharply against the dark metallic framework fused into her body, while strands of deep violet hair spilled loosely over cybernetic armor painted in royal shades of black, gold, and purple. Crimson light glowed softly from the mechanical core embedded within her chest, pulsing like an artificial heartbeat beneath layers of steel and flesh. Her face retained traces of beauty, but it was the dangerous kind, the kind sharpened by intelligence, ambition, and centuries of surviving among monsters. Thin cybernetic lines crept beneath her skin, connecting seamlessly into the machinery around her, as though the control room recognized her as part of itself. And when her glowing red eyes lifted toward someone, it never felt like she was simply looking at them. It felt like she was studying weaknesses, calculating outcomes, and deciding whether or not they were worth keeping alive. At the center of it all stood Victor. Unnaturally composed, he stood like a figure carved from shadow and steel. His face retained traces of aristocratic beauty, but time and cybernetic enhancement had sharpened those features into something severe and predatory. Pale skin stretched tightly across high cheekbones and a hollow, angular jaw, while faint scars and mechanical seams disappeared beneath the dark metallic purple armor fused into his body. At the center of his chest glowed a crimson core like an artificial heart, pulsing softly beneath layers of black and violet steel, as if feeding the machine that kept him immortal. But it was his eyes people remembered, deep red, cold, ancient. They carried none of the theatrical cruelty the syndicate displayed in public. Victor did not need spectacle to inspire fear. His gaze felt surgical, precise enough to dissect a person's thoughts before they ever spoke them aloud. Even surrounded by towering holographic systems and cyborg soldiers, he seemed less like part of the machinery and more like the intelligence controlling it from somewhere far deeper and darker. There was no wasted movement in him, no unnecessary emotion. Every gesture felt measured, every silence intentional. He carried himself not like a ruler desperate to maintain power, but like a creature that had already outlived entire civilizations and fully expected to outlive the next one too. He stared silently at the massive holographic projection of the death match. Frozen flames hovered around the image of Rex Talon emerging from the explosion in wolf form. The corrupted data from Lena's tuning still flickered across parts of the recording, like wounds in reality itself. Behind him, elegant footsteps echoed softly through the chamber. Lucia approached with the quiet confidence of someone who understood power intimately enough not to fear it. "We have the information you requested, sire." "What do you have, Lucia?" he asked with his menacing, deep voice. A holographic file opened beside her. "His name is Rex Talon," she said calmly. "He is nobody important, really. Just another gang member from the underworld." Victor finally looked toward her. "Then somebody explained to me," he said softly, "who tuned him to survive the race." The room fell silent. Vlad stepped forward. "Nobody from the syndicate interfered, sire." Victor's crimson eyes narrowed slightly. That answer displeased him more than a lie would have. Lucia intervened. "There is definitely a new resistance forming in the underworld." Victor studied her carefully. "How do you know?" A faint smile crossed Lucia's lips. "I have my sources, sire." The Iron Howlers' clubhouse sat buried deep beneath the underworld, like a bunker in a post-apocalyptic scene. It hid behind the Drifter Moon Bar, which sat as a front for all kinds of illegal activities. The building had once been an abandoned industrial garage, long before the AR reshaped the city around it. Now it belonged entirely to the pack. Old motorcycle parts hung from the walls, beside faded club banners and stolen syndicate propaganda posters covered in graffiti and claw marks. Smoke drifted lazily beneath dim yellow lights, while the sound of engines echoed faintly from somewhere deeper underground. The smell of oil, beer, leather, sweat, and burned metal saturated the air so heavily it felt woven into the walls themselves. Tonight, however, the clubhouse felt different, quieter, tense. The laughter from the lake run had disappeared entirely, replaced by the uneasy silence of people realizing the world might be far worse than they had imagined. Nearly every member of the Iron Howlers had shown up. Some leaned against the walls with crossed arms, while others sat around old wooden tables littered with beer bottles and half-cleaned weapons. Prospects stood near the back, nervous and uncertain, pretending they weren't afraid. Joey stood amongst them, nervous and scared, but standing tall, trying hard not to show any fear. The older members remained quieter than usual, their eyes drifting constantly toward Lena and the black glasses resting in her hands. At the center of the room stood Grimfang. The old werewolf looked exhausted beneath the dim lights, but there was still authority in the way he carried himself. The room naturally bent around his presence. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he said finally. The clubhouse quieted immediately. Grimfang's eyes swept across the room slowly. "If you're here, there's no turning back." Nobody moved. "Our only order of business now," he paused briefly, is taking down the syndicate. The words settled heavily over the room. If you're not up to the challenge, Grim Fang continued, nodding toward the exit behind them, there's the door. No one left. Lena stepped forward carefully. The only way for us to disconnect from the AR and return to the real world is for me to connect directly into the main port of the master control program inside the Syndicate's castle. A low murmur moved through the clubhouse. We need to get inside, she continued. Find the main port, then figure out how it actually works. Rex leaned against the pool table nearby, arms crossed. That means this can't be some quick in-and-out job, he said. We're going to need time inside the castle. Steelhide, who was known for his bravery throughout all of the underworld, smirked to himself at the corner of the room. So basically, he muttered, a suicide mission. Saul Griffin, better known among the Iron Howlers as Steelhide, looked like a man who had spent his entire life surviving places that were designed to kill him. Age had carved itself into the sharp lines around his eyes and mouth, but it had not weakened him. If anything, it had hardened him into something denser, heavier, more dangerous. Thick gray streaks cut through his dark hair and beard, like scars left behind by time itself, while his weathered leather jacket hung across broad shoulders that still carried the strength of a fighter who trusted violence more than promises. There was a heaviness in the way he stared at people, a permanent suspicion that made it feel as though he was constantly deciding whether someone deserved respect or a broken jaw. Unlike Rex, whose wolf still carried traces of youth and instinct, Steelhide's presence felt controlled, disciplined, almost military. He spoke little, but when he did, the room listened carefully, because everyone understood he had survived long enough to earn that silence. Beneath the dim lights of the clubhouse, with smoke curling around his scarred face and old biker patches stitched across his jacket like campaign medals from forgotten wars, Steelhide looked less like a man and more like the kind of creature forged slowly through decades of loyalty, brutality, and loss. Grimfang looked toward him calmly. If we stay here and do nothing, he said quietly, then we're already dead. The room fell silent again. Food for the cyborg vampires, Grimfang finished. That landed harder than anyone wanted to admit. The front door suddenly burst open. Finn stumbled inside, wearing an amused grin. Look what I found wandering outside the clubhouse. Several howlers immediately tensed. Michael Cross stepped into the room behind him. The peacekeeper walked in. Tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in worn black leather that blended almost seamlessly with the darkness of the clubhouse. He looked less like a heavenly peacekeeper and more like an executioner who had grown tired of pretending otherwise. His face was stern and sharply defined, marked by heavy shadows beneath focused eyes that seemed constantly burdened by thoughts he could never fully escape. Even before the transformation, there was something unnatural about his presence. Steelhide's expression hardened instantly. What the hell is he doing here? He growled. You know he's an archangel, right? Michael tilted his head slightly. You got a problem with archangels? Then the wings appeared. Massive black feathers unfolded behind him with terrifying elegance, stretching wide enough to swallow the dim clubhouse lights in shadow. Unlike the clean silver imagery the people of Hightown associated with the archangels, Michael's wings looked darker, older, almost war-torn, as though they had carried him through countless battles the AR preferred to forget. A silver cross rested against his chest beneath the leather jacket, catching the light as he moved through the room with quiet confidence. He did not radiate nobility in the way the syndicate members did. And then the full transformation happened instantly. Metallic wings exploded outward behind him as glowing armor surged across his body like liquid silver. His eyes ignited gold beneath the dim lights, while the air itself seemed to vibrate with energy. The Archangel armor looked less like military equipment and more like something forged for holy war. Layers of polished gold and midnight blue metal wrapped seamlessly around the body in overlapping plates that resembled the ceremonial armor of ancient knights, only reborn through futuristic engineering. The chest piece carried elegant engraved symbols and glowing energy lines that pulsed faintly beneath the surface. Liquid light running through the suit itself, every movement produced the quiet, mechanical precision of advanced machinery, far beyond anything seen in the underworld. Yet the design still retained something strangely regal, as if the syndicate wanted their peacekeepers to resemble divine warriors descending from heaven, rather than soldiers enforcing control. But it was the wings that transformed the armor into something unforgettable. Massive metallic feathers unfolded from the back in layered rows of steel, gold, and deep cobalt blue, spreading outward with terrifying majesty. Under the warm lights of the clubhouse, they reflected like cathedral-stained glass brought to life in motion. The wings were beautiful from a distance, but up close, they carried the sharpness of weapons. Every feather looked capable of cutting flesh if deployed at full speed. Combined with the dark visor concealing the wearer's face completely, the armor erased almost all traces of humanity. An archangel in full battle form no longer looked like a person wearing armor. They looked like a living monument to order, judgment, and violence, wrapped in the illusion of divinity. Several bikers stood immediately. Steelhide transformed almost as quickly, fur erupting across his arms as claws extended from his hands. A deep growl rolled through his chest, while other howlers instinctively shifted beside him. Machine guns drawn. The iron howlers were ready to fight. In the AR, outlaw werewolf bikers and archangels had always been natural enemies. The howlers represented chaos. The archangels represented order. And both sides had spent decades spilling blood over the difference. Enough! Grimfang's voice cracked through the tension like thunder. Save it for the syndicate, he growled. They're the enemy now. The room held its breath. There'll be plenty of fighting coming our way soon enough. Slowly, Michael returned to human form. The armor dissolved back beneath his skin, while the glowing wings disappeared entirely. He looked around the clubhouse almost smugly. "So," he said softly, "you finally believe what I've been trying to tell you all along." Grimfang walked toward him slowly. "It's good to have you here, Michael." A faint smile crossed Michael's face. "We're going to need you," Grimfang added. Lena stepped forward again, her expression turning serious. "You all need to be extremely careful now," she warned. "Do not talk to anyone outside this room." Rex nodded beside her. "Not that anybody would believe you anyway." A few uneasy laughs broke the tension briefly, but Lena did not smile. "I'm serious," she said firmly. "We cannot let the syndicate know we're onto them. Nobody outside this room can know anything." Near the back of the clubhouse, Joey suddenly began shaking. At first, Lena thought he was cold. Then she realized he looked terrified. The young prospect slowly raised his hand, like a scared young schoolboy requesting to go to the restroom after he had already had an accident. Rex frowned. "What is it, Joey?" Joey swallowed hard. "What happens," he whispered, "if you tell somebody?" The room drew still again. Lena looked directly at him. "The syndicate doesn't need to find you inside the AR," she said quietly. "They can disconnect you in the real world." Joey stared at her blankly. "You disappear here," she continued softly, "and they eat you there." Nobody laughed this time. Even Finn looked uncomfortable. Then, because Finn hated silence almost as much as fear, he forced a crooked grin onto his face. "So, this is it, P?" he asked Grimfang. "The Pope's new army? A few crusty bitches and a handful of ragtags?" A few scattered chuckles followed. Lena looked directly at him. "Nobody's forcing you to come." Before Finn could answer, Joey vanished. Not metaphorically, not gradually. 1 second he stood near the wall, trembling in fear. The next, he was simply gone. The room erupted instantly. "Joey!" Rex lunged toward the empty space where the prospect had been standing only moments before. The lights flickered violently overhead. For a brief second, Lena's tuning reacted instinctively, and everyone saw it. The real world. Darkness. Rows of human bodies suspended in machines. Joey convulsed violently inside a metal restraint chair as cables disconnected from the base of his skull. And surrounding him, cyborg vampires. More accurately, Wendigos. Their elegant avatars were gone. These creatures were skeletal and pale beneath the dead industrial lights, their mouths opening unnaturally wide as they descended on him like starving animals. Joey screamed once. Then the image disappeared. The clubhouse returned. Silence swallowed the room whole. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Because for the first time since learning the truth, the Iron Howlers had not merely seen what waited for them in the real world. They had watched it feed.